Well, since it's the poetry of silence, we're basically not going to speak for the next hour and just enjoy the presence of silence together. Um, Diane's like, no, we're not.
That's happening on Monday. That's enough.
That would be fun to do, though, I have to say. I'd like to actually end today for us to talk a little bit about silence, what that kind of means in our lives, and if we have befriended it or if we're still struggling with it. And so, maybe some insight about why that's happening would always be so helpful, I think. I'd like to open with a poem by Fred Lamont. I've read his work before. He is from California. He's a retired religion teacher in California, and I just love his work. This poem is called How Will You Know Her? Between heartbeats, there is a garden, the place where Magdalene touched Jesus. She thought he was the gardener. He thought she was the breath of God caressing him. She was. In between heartbeats, there is a garden, the wilderness where Israel met wisdom, the Sabbath, singing of loss. How could they make love in the desert? They pitched a tent of gathered silences, a holy pavilion of animal skins. Between heartbeats, there is a garden where the village girls bring milk pails to meet the prince of herds. Each of those girls is his flute, but only one can be his song. If she does not walk with you in the cool of the evening through this very garden between heartbeats, how can you call her your lover? What are the signs that prove one is betrothed to you? Dear friend, your emptiness turns indigo, fragrant like jasmine. The numb and awkward places in you overflow like awakening breasts with a nectar of yearning. You no longer fear growing hollow like an autumn gourd or floating a leaf upon the night. And when your flesh falls asleep, you fall into prayer, into a kind of wedding with wordless vows, where the bride wears your own inhalation as her luminous veil. She presses the kiss of solitude between your eyebrows, a throbbing pearl of dreamlessness. Instead of slumber, an unwavering flame glows in your spine, burning the oil of bewilderment. His scent is love. And in the darkest hour, you cease to ask for any light at all, because the midnight stillness under your breastbone has become a maelstrom of stars. Now you are present to yourself, like the silver in a moonbeam, the sweetness in a mother's milk, the dignity of this breath, how it gently places the soul in each cell of your body, which becomes your lover's secret name. We can just end right there because that was so good.
The images are so beautiful.
So beautiful. And I felt like silence just, it arrived in that poem in so many ways. They pitched a tent of gathered silences. Oh my goodness, why did I not write that line? Between heartbeats, he continually comes back to that between heartbeats, which is silence, between the heartbeat. There's really a pause, there's a silence, there's a waiting for the next heartbeat. I've got my Adobe Flash Player. Would like to have me uninstall it right now. Let's see if I can close that. And then he says, your emptiness turns indigo into fragrant jasmine. And I think of the word of emptiness being like the word silence, you know, that open space where we haven't filled it yet. We don't know what's coming, the pregnancy of things. You no longer feel growing hollow as an autumn gourd. I love that. Just the lack of fear of the openness, the emptiness. Yeah, that's a good one. He's a fantastic poet. I just am so in love with his work.
How did you come to know about him?
I have a friend named Allie Shabar. She lives here in town, and she actually helped me do the advertising on some of my first readings. She used to live in New Mexico and somehow knew him, but you can just go on Facebook and type in Fred Lamont and his name will come up, and he posts poems constantly. He's an older man and he sort of recognizes that he might not have enough time to publish another book. So he just puts them out on Facebook, and he's very prolific. And he has a teacher from India who I've never heard of. So he's meditated a lot and spent a lot of time in silence. And but because he taught religion, he really believed in, you know, sort of honoring all people's paths. And it's so lovely. And he talks a lot about that, about the non-duality of the way we can approach each other. I really appreciate that a lot. Well, I didn't realize that I pulled this other poem up, and I didn't realize now that I'm looking at it, because I haven't read it in a while, that there are some similar words, but this is a Rumi poem. Polish the mirror between the breaths. Go with him beyond words. He knows your every deed. He is the one who moves the wheel of heaven in silence. Every thought is buried in your heart. He will reveal them one by one in silence. Turn each of your thoughts into a bird and let them fly to the other world. One is an owl, one is a falcon, one a crow. Each one is different from the others, but they are all the same in silence. To see the moon that cannot be seen, turn your eyes inward and look at yourself in silence. In this world and the next, don't talk about this and that. Let him show you everything, shining as one in silence. It's actually not a Rumi translation. It is translated by a fellow named Jonathan Starr, who I've never heard. But the title of his book is In the Arms of the Beloved, such a great title. I don't even know where I found that translation. I just found out that in French, there's a saying, and the saying is to translate is to betray. And I thought that was so interesting when you talk about, you know, this kind of really beautiful poetry, how hard it is to translate it, how impossible really it is to translate it.
Well, you worked in your silence theme very nicely there.
Thank you. I was telling Diana that I got home from Atlanta much later than I had hoped, and was really worried about being able to gather all this material for all three of you. I just want you to know, for all three of you. So, so David Whyte, I know that you all know David Whyte, the Irish poet who was actually raised in England, even though I think he was from Ireland initially. People think of him as a Welsh poet, but he's actually not a Welsh poet. He has a lovely thing to say about silence, and we're just going to listen for a second. And let me see now.
you're much kinder to yourself, to others, when you have a relationship with the unknown. If you think you know everything and have all the answers, then you're very unkind to people who don't have the same answers. You can see that in the political dialogue in the United States right now. A certain portion of people who think they have all the answers, and other people are beyond the pale. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision is gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the dark where the night has eyes to recognize its own. So this outer horizon of the unknown is now in dialogue with the inner horizon of the unknown, that deep but dazzling darkness inside you. Yeah. As I said earlier, it's deep because it's foundational. It's dazzling. What's accurate about the poetic line is it's dazzling because, to begin with, it just reflects your surface personality. It's actually very difficult to drop below. And the only way you drop below that horizon is if you have a relationship with silence. And it's the only way you can further the conversation with the unknown is if you're silent and you're able to inhabit the breath, which, when you think about it, is the foundational way that you give and take. It's actually representative of your foundational conversation in life. The way you give and the way you take. The way you take in and are grateful, and the way you give out. And that whole rhythm in the body of breathing. You must learn one thing. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Give up all the other worlds except the one to... Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to find anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. You could equally, in that last line, say, anything or anyone that does not bring you alive, you have made too small for you. Because all of us know the dynamic where our cherished loved ones are the ones who are most confining us, and most make us feel small. And that's almost always because the way we're holding the conversation with them, or the conditions under which we're holding the conversation with them, are just imprisoning us. Yeah. And the ability to, often because of implicit promises about the way you were going to be together. Sweet darkness, yeah, the unknown horizon inside us. What's difficult, one of the reasons we like to have that inner horizon dazzling where we can't see beneath it is that the soul, which is that central faculty of belonging inside you, is determined to belong to the world in the biggest way it can, and it doesn't give a damn about what you believe, or what goals you've set previously. It's subversive to our surface ambitions. You'll often see people go bankrupt, and with an endeavor or an enterprise, and you look at what their behavior over years that led to it. You couldn't have planned it better than the way they planned it to destroy something. I think we're seeing it unconsciously with Trump now. And often what looks like a disaster on the surface, the soul has been unconsciously planning for years. It's been working to subvert something that's imprisoning you on the surface, but which you are following as a false ambition and false promise and false vow. Yeah. Mm. So we have to understand that this dynamic beneath the internal horizon is both incredibly nourishing and incredibly disturbing at the same time. And the only way you can actually stay in that conversation is if you have a relationship with silence. Otherwise, your strategic mind will come in right away and call it names in a way, belittle it, and go back to normal procedure.
like to just start at the beginning of this video. I'd like just to listen maybe to the first 45 seconds again, because I think the way he enters the conversation about silence is such a beautiful one.
You're much kinder to yourself and to others when you have a relationship with the unknown. If you think you know everything and have all the answers, then you're very unkind to people who don't have the same answers. You can see that in the political dialogue in the United States right now. A certain portion of people who think they have all the answers, and other people are beyond the pale. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision is gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the dark where the night has eyes to recognize its own. So this outer horizon of the unknown is now in dialogue with the inner horizon of the unknown, that deep but dazzling darkness inside you. Yeah. As I said earlier, it's deep because it's foundational. It's dazzling. What's accurate about the poetic line is it's dazzling because, to begin with, it just reflects your surface personality. It's actually very difficult to drop below. And the only way you drop below that horizon is if you have a relationship with silence.
David White is sort of known for being, confident and having a lot to say, but saying it in a way that I think really brings in lots of different perspectives and creates a rich tapestry where we can sort of find ourselves wherever we happen to be. And it's something that I've really enjoyed about conversations that I've had with people in Europe. I've noticed that when I was living in Europe, which I lived for several years, working and going to school, I noticed that you could have a conversation about something controversial and people would actually just listen, and then they would respond. And you could tell they were actually really listening to what you're saying, and they weren't responding because they wanted to make sure you knew that they had an answer. They were responding because they were just telling you what they felt or thought. It was much more of a calm exchange and a quiet listening without thinking I've it's my turn and now I'm going to put you on a corner or something. And I just really kept thinking to myself, wow, that's something that we don't really do here very, very much. I know that I often fail to do. So any thoughts on what he just said?
It strikes, Ralph wants to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
I like the way he addressed the idea of having a relationship with the unknown, a silent relationship with the unknown. Couldn't be real unless it were a bit close relation to just experiencing doubt. But being able to be objective about it,
Yeah.
Because then Baba discusses about discipleship we were reading in the discourses. I don't know if it was a group with Diane or another one, but was talked about qualifications of the discipleship. Yeah. And relationship with the unknown is, to me, sort of like constructive meditation. I mean, we don't know, do we?
Right.
We do not know.
Right.
I don't think any of us know. Yeah.
I love that you've combined discipleship with not knowing, because I don't know about the rest of you, but several times Baba has asked me to do something that I really just did not want to do, like seriously did not want to do, and complained about it and said, no, 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 Bob, I'm not doing that. And then I did it. And I just got such a gift out of it because Baba knew something was there for me, like a jewel box.
Yeah.
Waiting
Yeah.
when I got to the other side of that action that he asked me to do. And I think there's really something to what you're saying, that if we recognize that we don't have the answers, and then we can be asked to do something that seems a little crazy or odd, but we're willing to do it, then that is a kind of surrender to the unknown. And it's a kind of trust in our own intuition and in Baba's guidance. But so I love that you said that. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really important point. Diana, were you going to say something?
I also liked what you said, Ralph, and I think that this poet really seems, his poetry is, I mean, it's his spiritual path. You know, you see that in what he was saying. And I mean, he was presenting it as something that would be, one would envy, one would want to go there. And I was just thinking maybe that's one of the roles that a poet can play in the world, which is really to turn people to important topics.
Absolutely. To be transformational.
Yeah.
100%. Allie, that is so funny. You are on here. Welcome. I would just mention your name about 3 minutes ago. I read one of Fred Lamont's beautiful poems about In Between the Heartbeats, and someone asked me, where did you meet that poet? And I said, well, it's a friend of mine named Allie introduced me to him, and that's so funny you're here. I love that. Welcome. We just listened to David White talk a little bit about befriending silence, and we just read a Rumi poem about silence. And I am now going to read another David White poem, which I think takes a different approach about silence, but it's called The Well of Grief. Those who will not slip below the still surface on the well of grief, turning down to its black water, to the place that we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness, glimmering, the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. I'm just going to read that again because I think it takes a minute to translate that. Those who will not slip below the still surface on the well of grief, turning down to its black water, to the place that we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness, glimmering, the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. What I really love about that poem is that he's not just, talking about that for so many of us, grief is really I don't want to say it's a motivating factor, but it's a background conversation that so many of us are having and have had, and know that we will have again, and even in our joy. I think Hildebrand said, the deeper that sorrow carves into our heart, the more joy we can contain. I've definitely found that to be true. And I feel like there's something to be said about that when you're willing to go into that dark water that is sometimes troubling to go into, there you actually find the calling and the longing of yourself and others who are actually trying to come out of that, but coming out of it by recognizing that their coins are actually at the bottom of the well. So any thoughts on that?
a little bit. But it could also be, I mean, to dwell on things dark rather than dwell on things that, I mean, not that there's a, do we only dwell on things dark? And what about the things that are handed to us, like from the Bible, be still and know that I am God.
Yeah.
That's the meditation. And Bob, of course, you know, encourages us to meditate on the names of God, meditate on his name, meditate on his form. And the darkness can be illumined through that, in that regard.
Yeah.
If we do, I'm thinking we can we can get lost by just dwelling on darkness. I mean, I don't know. Depends on where we're coming from, perhaps. I mean, if we're overcome, if something possesses us, you know, a gloom or a mood, then we may, then, yeah, you know, then there it is. It's before us. It's got us, and we need to address it.
Yeah.
It's good to take Baba's hand, try to get Baba in hand in the effort, I think, as a companion in the effort. Yeah.
Yes. I love that Baba encourages us to be cheerful. I love that. And I don't know about you, but it's gotten me through more than one difficult hour in my life. And I love that David White finds glistening coins born from wishes, you know, to be cheerful, to find something better. And I love that he invites us to both of those. I think there's something really quite profound that he invites us to both of those. So yeah, thank you once again, Ralph. You've said something of value, as you somehow always manage to do. I don't know how you do that. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that?
Well, just about the dark places, it's so important to hold them at some distance. I mean, if we get lost in the dark spaces, there's not a value there. It's a value if we know we're not stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I didn't hear him, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't hear him clarify that in his talk. Yeah. Because there's such a danger, and we know that people are so attracted to the dark.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's why people are not very happy about going into their dark thoughts or the well of grief. I think that's probably exactly why people don't do it more often, is they're terrified that they're going to get in there and they're not going to be able to get out. And so it keeps people paralyzed and we're just unwilling to look at it. I mean, I had a friend who's not happy, and I've been recommending that she, you know, talk to someone about it. And she said, I'm afraid to talk to someone about it. And I said, why? And she said, I'm afraid that I'll feel feelings that I won't be comfortable with. And I thought, well, that was so honest of her. And she just said, no, she wasn't going to do it because she didn't want to look at those feelings. And I thought to myself, that's really a kind of being stuck, you know. So I guess I remember when I was teaching meditation, I was talking about, you know, sitting with ourselves in silence. And one of the students said to me, I am scared to do this. And I said, why? And she said, I'm afraid there will be nothing there. when I sit in the silence of my own heart. And I think it's the beauty of believing in God. To me, it's the beauty of having a relationship with what we consider to be divine, that we know that that hand is there, that that light is there. And if we can't find our own, we can't hold our own good hand, that we can reach for something bigger than ourselves to let us know we're not alone. Because I think that fear that we are going to be alone in that silence is it's deafening for people. So yeah, it's a great point, Diana. I'm so glad you brought it up. And we're so lucky to know that we have some hands to reach out to.
Well, I think, like with Babu, when he talks about the everything and the nothing, the light and the darkness, when you see that they're part of each other, that even in the dark, you need the light to create the dark. So
Yeah.
That's a way of playing with words, but still.
I just I guess for me I'm sorry, my air conditioning is not working, so I'm glistening. I think for me, the beauty of David White's words, for us, is that you hear people talk about spiritual bypassing quite a bit. And I see that happening. Spiritual bypassing meaning just saying it's all good, it's all fine, we're not going to deal with it, and not dealing with it, and then really not going through that transformation that you so beautifully talked about poetry having the power to do. I think it's one of the reasons why Baba loved poetry so much, because it has the power to bypass the mind and go straight to the heart, where that transformation really happens in a deeper way. So I guess for me, the reason I thought that David White's words were potentially powerful is that he's inviting both, like you said, the everything and the nothing. He's inviting both, not just one or the other. So, but yes, I think your point is very valid, that it can be a dangerous place to go for people. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Hence, addiction is so profound. Guess what? Oh, guess what I just read? The number one cause of middle-aged women in the United States, guess what it is?
Cause of what?
The number one cause of death for middle-aged women in the United States: suicide and drug overdose. So your point is well made, because there are a lot of people, if you've gotten into that situation, then you've gone down that well and you haven't been able to get back out. Yeah, so yeah. I'm going to go to one of our favorite poets, Jeff Wolverton, who we all adore and love. This is his book, Whistling Past the Tavern. If you don't have a copy, run, do not walk, and get one. It's so good. This world is like the rowdy neighbors upstairs, partying all night. The more you complain, the more stubborn they become, and the stomping of feet and blaring music goes on. It is our fated, god-awful career to learn to live with a whole wide range of raucous noise, until one day we sink beneath the warm waves of his silence. That's exactly what we were just saying, Diana. Ollie, do you know Jeff Wolverton? He's one of the caretakers at the Baba Center, and we all love him like he's our grandfather. We lost when we were 5. Wish he was still alive. Thank you for introducing me. This is another Rumi poem. I tend to sort of fall into the lap of Rumi because I cannot find any poet I love more. This is from a lovely anthology, which is a really great, I think a great anthology to have if you want to introduce yourself to a wider range of poets. It's called The Enlightened Heart, and it's edited by Stephen Mitchell. He's quite well known in the poetry world. And okay. Totally conscious and apropos of nothing, he comes to see me. Is someone here? I ask. The moon, the full moon, is inside your house. My friends and I go running out into the street. I'm here, comes a voice from the house, but we are not listening. We're looking up at the sky. My pet nightingale sobs like a drunk in the garden. Ringdoves scatter with small cries. Where? Where? It's midnight. The whole neighborhood is up and out in the street thinking, the cat burglar has come back. The actual thief is there too, saying out loud, yes, the cat burglar is somewhere in this crowd. No one pays attention. Lo, I am with you always means when you look for God, God is in the look of your eyes, in the thought of looking, nearer to you than your own self or things that have happened to you. There is no need to go outside. Be melting snow. Wash yourself of yourself. A white flower grows in the quietness. Let your tongue become that flower. Any comments? Diana, I want to make sure I heard you. I'm feeling some tension in my stomach, and I just want to make sure that that you said everything you wanted to say about that, and that you felt heard. And okay, good. It's an important topic you brought up. Has anyone brought a poem about silence or a quote that they'd like to share before I carry on? This is by Pablo Neruda. We did a whole hour on Pablo Neruda. I think it was last year. Chilean poet who was really from the turn of the century, and was really an activist, and had to go into exile because he was really being hunted by Pinochet, who killed so many people, tens of thousands of people in Chile. And Pope Francis actually was a monk, a priest, during the time of Pinochet, and was hiding people in his monastery, and survived that regime. And Pablo Neruda was eventually poisoned by the government, who recognized, like you said, Diana, who recognized that poetry has the power to be transformational and transformational, and did not want that transformational voice to lift people up in this very difficult time that Chile went through. And it's called Keeping Quiet. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still for once on the face of the earth. Let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the men gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and winter and later proves to be quite alive. Now you, now me, let's keep silent. I remember when I was living in Atlanta, I was there during the Olympics, and it was in 1996. And the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote an article about the fact that, the crime in Atlanta was actually had the highest crime rate of any city in the United States when I lived there. And it was quite on everybody's mind. And they kept pretty close statistics on that. And they said that when the Olympics opening was held in downtown Atlanta, literally the crime rate in Atlanta went to 0. Even though not everyone could be there, not everyone was even probably watching it on TV, but the fact that this really special thing was happening and everybody was really aware of it and really happy and excited about it just stopped people to pause. And I just thought that was such an incredible statistic that they shared. I was very touched by that reality, and I thought, wow, what more fun things can we think of to do to get people to stop for a moment, not be violent. Any comments, thoughts? This is a Rainier Marie Rilke poem. I've always loved him since I was a teenager. And I thought it was a woman for the longest time, since his middle name is Marie, but as it turns out it's a man, and he was from the Czech Republic and then became a very significant German and Austrian poet. And so this is translated from the German. I am too alone in the world and not alone enough to make every minute holy. I am too alone in the world and not alone enough to make every moment holy. I am too tiny in this world and not tiny enough just to lie before you like a thing, shrewd and secretive. I want my own will, and I want simply to be with my will as it goes towards action. And in the silent, sometimes hardly moving times when something is coming near, I want to be with those who know secret things, or else alone. I want to be a mirror for your whole body and never want to be blind or to be too old to hold up your heavy and swaying picture. I want to unfold, because where I am folded, there is a lie. I want my grasp of things true. I want to describe myself like a painting that I looked at closely for a long time, like a saying that I finally understood, like the picture that I use every day, like the face of my mother, like a ship that took me safely through the wildest storm of all. I'm just going to read it again because that was a lot of beautiful words and a lot of movement in that poem. I am too alone in the world and not alone enough to make every minute holy. I am too tiny in this world and not tiny enough just to lie before you like a thing, shrewd and secretive. I want my own will, and I want simply to be with my will as it goes towards action. And in the silent, sometimes hardly moving times when something is coming near, I want to be with those who know secret things, or else alone. I want to be a mirror for your whole body, and I never want to be blind or to be too old to hold up your heavy and swaying picture. I want to unfold, because where I am folded, there is a lie. I want my grasp of things true. I want to describe myself like a painting that I looked at closely for a long time, like a saying that I finally understood, like the picture that I use every day, like the face of my mother, like a ship that took me safely through the wildest storm of all. I think my favorite line in this whole poem is, I want to be with those who know secret things or else alone. And that reminds me of what we're talking about, silence.
I like that poem a lot.
I know.
I love that first line.
The first line?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, right?
'Cause he's wanting to know himself, and he wants to lead his life truly. He wants to lead a true life.
Yes.
That's such a beautiful thought.
And it's funny because I was just thinking, I guess because it's summertime, I was thinking about how often I will go somewhere like on a retreat for a weekend or for a few days. And then I just busy myself the whole time I'm on the retreat. Like, I can't waste a minute of it. And somehow it becomes the antithesis of what I really wanted to experience, which is the spaciousness of that retreat. And it's just, I feel like it's exactly what he's saying. I'm too alone, and I'm not alone enough in order to be present with the holiness of the world. Yeah. I recently discovered that the word vacation comes from the word vacare, which means to empty. How often do we do that? Not very often, but we love the Baba Center for that, because what a great place to empty ourselves. Darn it,
Vacant, vacation, because
yes. I'm quite interested in the source of words. This is a very short poem. I was thinking about, well, I'll just read it. It's called Cavernous Star-Studded Mouth. Very short, so I don't have too many thoughts, or you'll just miss the whole thing. The whole world could swallow me up. Not swallow me up and spit me out, but swallow me up and hold me in that nurturing radiance of spoken and unspoken power. Like being held in the cavernous, star-studded mouth of the sky, ready to sing light out everywhere. Spoken and unspoken power. I just think that's an interesting way to talk about silence and that which has not been said, and in which something that we haven't found the words for, but we don't even really know what we're feeling, and so it's still swimming inside of us. It's a poem I wrote when I was in Canada, sleeping in the middle of nowhere, thinking I was going to fall into the bowl of the sky because I could see the Milky Way. It was so incredible. So I told myself I wasn't going to read a lot of Rumi poems, but here I am reading number 3. Rumi, I'm going to end with number 3, called Both Wings Broken. Love draws a dagger and pulls me close. Lock and key, bird with both wings broken. The love religion is all that's written here. You open me wide open and you tie me tighter. The ball waits on the field to be hit again. You push me into fire like Abraham. You pull me out like Muhammad. Which do you like better, you ask? All the same, if it's your hand, troubles or peace. Friends become enemies, faithless, faithful. Some knots tighten, some loosen. Unruly tangle of caution and rebellion, ropes and uncombed hair, no one can tell. Then comes the sure attention of a mother's hand for her hurt child. The way you reach out for all of us. Oh, I read the wrong poem. I'll just read the next one because the next one was the one I'm reading, although I have to say I really loved that poem. What I loved about that poem is how we're talking about hope and grief, you know, and light and dark, and he's really saying just what Rilke just said, you know, I'm too alone and I'm not alone enough in order to find the holiness of this moment, and Remy is sort of saying something very similar. But here's the poem I meant to read. Called Blessing the Marriage. This marriage with wine and halva, honey dissolving into milk. This marriage be the leaves and the fruit of a date tree. This marriage be women laughing together for days on end. This marriage a sign for us to study. This marriage beauty. This marriage a moon in a light blue sky. This marriage, this silence fully mixed with spirit.